The only phrase I know how to describe our current situation right now is up shit creek without a paddle. Things have gone from bad to far, far worse since last night. And to tell the truth, everyone now is scared out of their damn minds. Well, almost everyone. But I'll get to that in a minute. Look, before I say anything, let me again say thank you to those of you who commented on last night's post. Despite everything that has happened today, we managed to make some progress. And I can't help but think it was thanks to you all giving us some direction. Let me quickly answer a few things that you brought up. First and foremost, as soon as I opened the laptop and saw the comment, I went and pulled one of the maps of the ship off the wall, looking to see if there is indeed any sort of chapel or religious gathering area for us to hole up in. Unfortunately, the Queen Elizabeth seems to have never have had one built aboard her, so that idea's out. Secondly, the reason why we set up base camp in the lounge is because it was the first place we reached when we came aboard. It's the place we know best. After yesterday, though, and especially with our current predicament, I'm beginning to think maybe moving one or two adjoining cabins might be a better idea. Not as much room for anyone, or anything, to creep up on us. Now that being said, let me tell you what happened today. We were roused by the captain just after 10 in the morning. "Come on, Nate," he said it softly to me, shaking my shoulder. We've got work to do today, mate." Then he moved away to wake the others. For a minute, I simply lay there, staring up at the ceiling high over our heads, and those horrible mental images of the shadowy figures followed me into my nightmares, and I dreamed of running down dark and seemingly endless hallways. The figures always just a step behind me. I shivered slightly as I remembered the voice welcoming me, welcoming all of us on board. I attempted to force the image out of my head and pulled myself from a sleeping bag and up to my feet. Once everyone was awake, we had breakfast and I broke out the computer to see what people had said. I quickly scrolled down to their comments as the others came over. As much as I wanted to tell them about what I'd seen yesterday, a small part of me whispered that none of them would believe me, especially after what Andrew, Spence and Will said they saw happen to me. If anything similar happens to me or anyone else, I'll tell them, but not until then. Anyway, everyone gathered around to read what you'd all suggested. I could tell to them it was like a lighthouse beacon helping guide them to safety. I couldn't help but feel a small pang of disappointment flow through me as they dismissed the ghost ship comments, even though I'd known it was coming. Apart from potentially the captain and me, nobody else had seen anything out of the ordinary. I shot a glance at the captain's way as he leaned in to read the screen, but any trace of fear I'd seen last night had been wiped away, replaced with his usual calm, calculating expression. "Well, at least people seem to agree with my idea to find the keys," he said it finally, standing back up and seeming somewhat pleased with himself. Wyatt leaned in and pointed at another comment. "Cap, what about this person's suggestion to move from lounge to some of the cabins to sleep? It'd be a hell of a lot more comfortable than another night on the floor." The captain rubbed his beard, thinking, "They may have a point. I wasn't able to get much sleep last night. We'll move our stuff into some of the first-class cabins." Just as the same as yesterday, we were paired off into two teams. The captain, Andrew and Spencer would head off to the crew quarters to try and find the keys, while myself, Wyatt, Will and Vinny would try and find any food we could to add to our dwindling supplies. I didn't want us to split up again. Not after what you've all said and what I'd experienced. But try as I might to say so to the captain, he remained steadfast. We need to cover as much ground as possible, Nate, he said after we dumped our stuff into the adjoining cabins near the lounge. And with that, he turned and hustled the other two in his group away. I watched them go, saying a silent prayer for them to be safe before turning to the others. Well, which way do we go? Vinny asked, gesturing to the many hallways that branched away from us. I looked down and studied the map of the ship for a moment. My eyes drifted past the maze of rooms and lounging areas before settling on a large area near the stern of the ship. How about we start here at what looks like a restaurant called the Veranda Grill? The three men craned to look at the map. Sure, why not? Wyatt said, shrugging his shoulders. With our destination set, we turned and began heading aft. Passing through the lounge, we found ourselves in more hallways that seemed to stretch on forever. Man, they had a lot of cabins just in first class alone, said Vinny as we passed a small sitting area, looking out onto the starboard side of the ship. And then he lowered his voice slightly. Hey, did any of you have anything weird happen to you yesterday? Well, the question caused me to stop dead in my tracks. What do you mean, weird? I asked. Everyone stopped now. Wyatt let out a soft groan. Oh, come on, Vin, nothing weird happened yesterday. The captain said so. But I could tell he wasn't being completely honest. Will's brow furrowed. What are you guys talking about? He took a step towards Vinny. Did something happen to you guys down in the engine room? Wyatt let out another protest, but Vinny seems to ignore him. I don't know, man. All I know is we were down there working like crazy to get the boilers up and running when I looked over at the captain. He'd stopped in the middle of giving us directions. I had no idea what to do next. I watched the big man shiver before he continued. He had the creepiest expression on his face. It was like he'd been hypnotized or something. The lights were on, but there was no one home. And then he just snapped out of it. He looked absolutely terrified for like half a second. Then he seemed to remember what was happening, and he just kept going. Wyatt cut in. That's because you didn't get much sleep last night. He literally told us that when you asked him what was up. I swear to God, Vinny, you're making a mountain out of a molehill with this dude. Vinny shot a slightly irritated stare at him before turning back to Will and me. I just need to know, did any of you have anything weird or, unusual happen to you guys yesterday? I exchanged a glance with Will. His expression was that of a perfect poker face, but the look in his eyes betrayed what raced behind them. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I debated whether to come clean about my experience, but Will spoke before I did. No, nothing like that. Nothing besides accidentally tripping over an overturned chair. I felt a wave of surprise shoot through me. The entire time I'd known Will, I'd never known him to deliberately lie. He was someone who always told the truth, even if it ended bad for him. Where the hell did this side of him come from? There, see? All is as well as it can be, Wyatt said triumphantly. Happy now, Vin? I saw him study our faces for another moment before shrugging. All right, I guess it was really nothing, and with that, he turned and began walking down the hall again. I spared one more glance at Will, but he simply shrugged at me and turned to follow them. I stared after him for a whole minute, unable to move, until a familiar shiver shot up my spine, one that indicated I was being watched. I swung my head around, looking behind me, back down the hallway. Nobody was there. Well, no one I could see anyways. But still, I I felt another shiver pass through me. I turned and jogged to catch up to the others. We found a set of stairs that, according to the sign next to them, led down to the restaurant deck from where we were on the main deck. Heading down a few flights, we found ourselves on yet another landing. Will let out a small laugh and pointed, "Hey guys, check it out." Across the landing from us was what looked like a small booth. Glass and metal bars separated the person who sat inside from everyone on the outside. Looking up, I saw a sign hanging over the windows. Purser's office. "Oh, that must be where you drop off any paperwork you need to travel abroad, along with your valuables you want locked in a ship's safe," Wyatt said, and he let out a laugh. "You think there's anything valuable still in there? Jewelry? Cash? Shit like that?" I turned to him, feeling a bit astonished. You're joking, right?" He shrugged. "Hey, we're alone on board here. If we took anything, I don't think anyone would know," he said, a bit of a malicious grin to his face. "Yeah, until the ship gets brought back to dock and the owners discover shit missing from there on. It's all shit for us, dumbass," Vinny said in a displeased tone. Now it was Wyatt's turn to give him an irritated look. "I was just kidding, man. Jeez." He looked down at the floor, muttering, "Killjoy." For my part, I gave him a long look and then looked over at the purser's office again. I don't think there'd be anyone on the land who'd be pissed off if we stole anything, I thought. But before anyone else could say anything, the radio let out a squawk. My heart momentarily began to thud in my chest. For a moment I was terrified I'd hear the man's voice from it again. Instead, the elated voice of the captain came. "Nate! Nate, we found the keys! They were hidden away in a desk in the captain's cabin!" A feeling of relief washed over me, and I pulled the walkie-talkie from my belt and thumbed it, as I saw relieved smiles cross the others' faces. "Oh, that's terrific, Cap. You want us to head straight up to the radio room?" The man spoke again, a sharp burst of static masking his voice. Say again?" Now the man's voice came in loud and clear. "Negative, Nathan. We might still need some supplies. We don't know how long it's going to take for anyone to reach us, and we're going to begin running low on food soon. Go check out the restaurants like you were planning and then come meet us." Wyatt's face fell at his words, but I saw the other two nod at me. Roger that, Cap. We'll try and be as quick as we can. Over and out." And with that, I clicked off. "Come on, guys. This way," I said, pointing to a sign at the start of the left hall. "Veranda Grill. This way." The four of us made our way down the hallway. A porthole stood open halfway down it, and we passed it, the smell of the ocean filtering in. I slowed to take a deep breath of it, letting it invigorate me. Just a bit. But I froze. I didn't just see that. I did not just see that. But I knew I had. As we passed the porthole, I shot a glance out, hoping to catch a glimpse of the relatively calm waters, and I caught a split-second glimpse of someone walking past it. It had been too quick to see anything besides a blur, but it had been enough. I felt the fear of yesterday return. Oh shit, not again, man. My heart raced in my chest and I felt a lump form in my throat. "Hey, you alright, Nate?" The voice snapped me back, and I looked up to see the others had turned to look back at me. All of them wore confused expressions on their faces. I fought to find my voice for a second, and then spoke, trying to sound calm. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys." Will cocked his head at me, giving me an odd look, but he didn't say anything. I refused the urge to look out the porthole again and started walking, pushing past them to begin leading the way again. "Come on, let's go, let's get this over with." For a moment, I heard nothing behind me, but then I heard the others follow. Holy freaking shitballs! Wyatt breathed out. That's... whoa! Hoo-hoo. We stood at the entrance to the restaurant next to a small sign that read, "Please wait here to be seated." For my part, I couldn't blame him for such a reaction. Even after what just happened, I couldn't help but feel in awe of the expansive room in front of us. Like the rest of the ship, wooden panelling covered the walls. The only difference was that in here, squares and tiles of aquamarine had been indented into them. Some had ornate shapes, and across the room I saw a massive painting of, or a stitching of what appeared to be a woman clad in ancient Greek or Roman clothing. Below her, 4 horses reared up as if to charge, while several men seemed to hold everything up in mid-air. Tables with expensive-looking tablecloths littered the room, the sea green upholstered chairs around them almost inviting people to come and sit in them. Shooting a glance to my right, I saw a huge grand piano set against the far wall, and a huge aquamarine curtain covering what must be a window to the stern deck. "I don't even want to imagine what it must cost to eat in here," Vinny said, causing everyone to laugh softly. "You're not joking," I replied, and then pointed across the room at a metal swinging door. "Look, there's the door to the kitchen." Winding our way through the sea of tables and chairs, we reached the door and stopped in front of it. I turned back to the others. "All right, cross your fingers. Hope we find something, guys." Taking a deep breath, I put my hands to the metal and pushed. We found ourselves in a huge industrial kitchen. Pots and pans of all kinds hung from the hooks on the ceiling, and multiple stoves stretched out far away onto the wall. Fanning out, we began to explore the room, opening cabinets and drawers. "I've got what looks like flour here," Vinny called out, holding up a large white bag. "Well, that's something at least." Continuing on, we pulled out more than a few ingredients, but nothing we could immediately eat. It got worse when we opened a giant fridge and saw nothing but items like butter and milk inside. "Oh, damn it," Wyatt yelled, slamming the fridge closed with a slam. He leaned back against the door, leaning his head back. Vinny spoke softly. "Look, man, if they were at port when the storm ripped her away, it stands to reason there might not have been much left in the restaurants. We still have the holds and the meat lockers to go through. Look, at least we found some things." Wyatt's eyes snapped open, and he glared at the man. "Oh yeah, that's always just like you, Vin. You've always got to try and cheer people up when you're not talking shit about things that have no merit." Quickly I realised the situation must have been eating heavily at him, and it was finally busting out. Vinny narrowed his eyes and took a step towards him, clenching his fists. "Hey, fuck you, man! At least I'm not the dumbass who thinks about robbing a ship when we should be searching for food." The two of them began to shout at each other, their voices filling up the room and bouncing off the metal walls. I shot a glance at Will, who wore a helpless expression on his face. Finally it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. "Shut up, both of you." I stood there, breathing in deeply as the two went dead silent, turning to look at me with slightly astonished looks on their faces. I'm not someone who yells often. Usually I'm calm and quiet. When I yell, people take notice. For a few moments there was nothing but silence in the kitchen as we all stared at each other. Looks of shame and guilt fell over Wyatt and Vinny's faces, and I saw them open their mouths to speak, likely to apologise. But whatever words they might have said died away as a sound sprang up behind us, back through the metal door. It was the sound of a piano beginning to play. But that wasn't the sound that caused all of our faces to go pale, though. That made the blood in my veins turn to ice and the gasp to escape my lips. No. That was because, along with the piano, came the sounds of people talking and laughing softly. Occasionally sounds of cutlery or glasses being picked up and put down again. My breaths began to come in short, ragged gasps. And slowly I turned to look at the swinging door. Vinny was the one who spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. What the fuck? I turned back to look at him. His mouth was hanging wide open, his lower lip trembling slightly. And the sight frightened me more than the sounds emanating back where we'd come. Vinny isn't someone who spooks easy after all. Then again, this isn't exactly your normal level of creepy shit. Now the sounds continued. I heard what sounded like a woman let out a particularly loud laugh. Wyatt spoke up. What do we do? He asked. The unspoken answer was what I'd been trying to avoid in my head. Aside from that door, there was no other way out of the kitchen. I forced myself to take a step towards the door. Nate, what the hell are you doing? Vinny hissed at me. But I ignored him, taking another step forward. With each step I took, the feeling of terror I'd had yesterday returned, rearing its ugly head to begin tearing apart my insides. I pictured dozens of shadowy figures waiting just on the other side of a door for us, waiting for us to step out so they could rush in. But it was either sit in the kitchen until the sounds go away, if they go away, or open the door and peek out. By the time I stood next to the door, my heart felt like I'd just finished running a furlong and sweat was rolling down my face. God, please don't let it happen again. Don't let them be there. Slowly, I reached out with a trembling hand, watching as it made its way to rest on the metal, which felt shockingly cold to the touch. I turned and gave one last look at the others. They looked absolutely petrified. I began to turn back, but a new sound came. This one louder, almost ear-piercing. I ripped my hands away from the door, clapping them both over my ears as they threatened to burst. What the shit? It continued for a few moments, and the realization slammed into my brain. It's the fucking ship's horn. And then it ceased, dying away, but leaving the sound echoing in my head. Slowly I pulled my hands away, looking up to see everyone else doing the same. That's when I realized everything had gone dead, silent. The sounds of the piano and the people no longer came from the other side of the door. It was as if they'd never even been there in the first place. Turning, I saw the others had realised it as well. Wyatt suddenly strode forward, pushing past me and slamming his shoulder into the door. It flew open, softly hitting the wall behind it with a thunk. It revealed nothing but the empty restaurant, as empty as it had been when we'd entered. For a moment he simply stood there as we gathered behind him and looked out. Then he took 2 steps into the room. No, there's no fucking way. He was saying it to himself. He swung around, an almost wild look in his eyes. I mean, you all heard that too, right? Slowly, we all nodded. His eyes darted around as he looked at the floor. That's freaking impossible. We're alone on this ship, but there were fucking people out here. People talking and shit. There was a fucking piano playing. He suddenly swung around, raising his arms and screaming into the empty room. What the fuck is going on? The 3 of us slowly left the kitchen. Vinny went to stand behind Wyatt, trying to calm him down, but I could see that the experience had, for lack of a better phrase, royally fucked up the man's brain, and that wasn't even half as terrifying as what I'd seen yesterday. The thought made me snap my head up and look around the restaurant, half expecting to see the shadowy figures emerging from the corners. But nothing stirred. The radio on my hip squawked. "Nate, come in right now. Nate, over." I reached down, trying to steady myself. I took a deep breath and thumbed the walkie-talkie. "I'm here. What's up, Cap?" The man's voice came over again. I noted with a pang of surprise that there was a trace of anger in it. "Wherever your team is, get the fuck up to the radio room now." I looked up from the radio, seeing that everyone had turned to look at me. I saw the same expressions of confusion and worry as I must have had on my face. I hit the button again. "Look, we're on our way." I spared a last look around the restaurant, motioned for the others to follow, and hurried down the hall. "So, you're telling me that none of you managed to get inside the radio room and rip out the microphone?" the captain demanded, the veins in his neck bulging out from barely disguised rage. Everyone stood in front of the radio room, which now hung wide open, the metal door swinging slightly, letting out soft creaks. I looked inside, seeing the ancient setup sitting on the left-hand side on the wall in the room. My eyes ran over all the equipment stacked neatly on top of each other, finally coming to rest on the place where the microphone that was used for transmitting radio calls stood. I should say, where it should have stood. Instead, the space lay bare, and I saw that it hadn't been gently pulled off from the system either. Frayed and snapped wires hung from a jack, still hooked into the radio, showing someone had ripped it out with a great deal of force. I finally found my voice. No. None of us would ever do that. Not where we want to get off this ship." He shot a glare at all of us, then shook the keys in his hand for emphasis. "So, you expect me to believe that while we went out to hunt for these, the room just happened to unlock itself, and the microphone just happened to tear itself out and walk away?" Vinny spoke up. "Look, Cap, Nate's telling the truth. We were nowhere near here, and none of us would sabotage rescue like this." The man's eyes snapped up to look at him. I saw Spencer shoot an accusatory look at us. "Then, where exactly were you? Considering that the captain called you over 20 minutes ago and told you to meet up with us right away." A wave of confusion washed over me. "What the hell are you talking about, Spence?" He rolled his eyes at me. "Oh, come on, dude. Don't give me that confused look bullshit. The captain radioed you, said we'd found the keys. When you asked him if you four should meet up right away, he said yes, and then you said that you guys were on your way and you'd meet us here." A mixture of shock and further confusion began to rise in me as I saw Wyatt and Vinny exchange puzzled looks. "No, that ain't right," Wyatt finally said. "Nate asked that question all right, but when the captain replied, he told us to keep going and search the restaurant for food and supplies." The captain turned an incredulous eye on Wyatt. "What restaurants? Nobody ever said anything about restaurants to me. I just said try and find some food and supplies." And then everyone began to argue, but the sound was drifting away from my ears as my mind raced. He's right. He never said anything to me about restaurants before we split up, just supplies. A shiver shot up my spine as another dot connected. And I never said anything about the restaurant when I replied to him. He was the one who... The realization slammed into me like a truck, and I felt all the blood drain from my face as the simple, but terrifying conclusion came to the surface. That wasn't the captain, I breathed out. Everyone stopped arguing to stare at me. What? Andrew asked, seeming confused. I slowly turned to look at the three who'd been with me and quietly repeating myself. That wasn't the captain who was talking to us. I saw the realization slam into Wyatt and Vinny's faces. Saw their faces turn as pale as mine was. Oh, fuck no, Wyatt whispered, his eyes beginning to frantically dart around in their sockets. Somebody want to explain to me just what the hell you're saying, the captain demanded. But I didn't answer. I stared at the shocked and frightened faces of my crewmates, at my 2 crewmates, and forced my voice out. Where's Will? Everyone went silent as they began to look around. Then they began to call his name. And finally, everyone began to run around, searching for our missing friend. Spencer dashed up the stairs to the bridge, returning later to confirm it was deserted. Panic began to well up inside me as we moved back from the bridge back down to the promenade deck. The guy was here not even 5 minutes ago. How the hell did he slip away? Will! I heard the captain call as he led the way to the main lounge, which stood as empty as it had when we left. He turned around, a look of panic on his face. Where the hell did he go? He exclaimed. As he continued to run for the other end of the room, a thought slowly began to push forward in my mind. For the life of me, I still can't explain why it came to me, but the more it persisted, the more I became convinced it was right. The veranda grill. I shouted it out. Everyone turned to look at me. Realizing most of them didn't know what I meant, I stabbed towards the aft section of the ship. The restaurant we went to. Wyatt and Vinny's face changed as their minds clicked. Moments later, the 3 of us were racing down the hallways, the others struggling to keep up. We took the stairs down to the restaurant deck 2 at a time, the marble steps threatening to fling our feet out from under us. Reaching the landing, we sprinted past the purser's office and down the hall. I didn't even spare a glance at the still open porthole. I didn't look at anything until we reached the entrance to the veranda grill. I stopped dead in my tracks. Why'd you stop running, you The captain began, but his voice died away as he heard it as well. Everyone stood as still and silent as a statue, listening. There were voices coming from inside the restaurant, just out of sight around the corner. I felt my pulse quicken. My heart began to pound yet again. The first voice I instantly recognized was Will's. The man's snorting laughter was unmistakable, but it was the second voice. A woman's voice that, for yet another time that day, froze the blood in my veins. Like Will's voice, this voice spoke too softly for me to be able to make out any specific words, but it was loud enough. I was able to make out one very specific detail. The woman spoke with a clear British accent. What the actual fuck? Andrew managed out. I slowly turned to look at the captain. His face had turned white as a sheet and I saw his lower lip quiver slightly. Then it set and he strode forward. Captain, no! I tried to whisper, reaching out to snag his arm, but he tore himself out of my grip and walked into the restaurant. Instantly the voices stopped speaking, and he simply stood there, staring at something out of sight. Then he gestured for us to come and join him. We all walked over to stand next to him. The The restaurant was empty, looking exactly as it had when we'd left, with just one exception. At a table near to the piano, Will sat with his back to us. He didn't turn around when we entered. He simply continued to sit and stare at the wall. Everyone exchanged a look, and then the captain led us over to him. As we approached him, I became aware of a smell which hung in the restaurant, the one which was impossible to miss. It was perfume. It grew stronger as we stepped next to him, and for a moment I was terrified that we'd see him dead, his mouth wrenched open in a silent, unending scream. Instead, to our surprise, a happy, content smile adorned his face. His eyes were glazed over, almost as if he was drunk or hypnotized. "Will?" the captain finally asked. His voice was low and fairly gentle. At his words, he swung his head to look at all of us. "Oh, hey guys," he said, his voice sounding almost like a character in a cartoon who'd been struck by Cupid's arrow. Wyatt spoke up. "Dude, where'd you go? You scared the hell out of us." Will shrugged his shoulders. "I'm sorry about that, everyone. I just met the most wonderful woman. The woman of my dreams for sure." A chill ran up my spine at his words. "What woman?" I managed out. He smiled. "Oh, her name's Diana. She's an actress, a singer. Oh, she's so intelligent and so interesting. God, what a woman." Then he turned more towards us, exposing the other side of his face. If I hadn't felt so mentally fried, I might have gasped. There was a red lipstick mark on Will's right cheek. The kind you get when a woman wearing it kisses you. It stood out clear as day, and even from this distance, I could see it still looked wet. Will's smile grew. "She likes me, you know," he declared it, looking like the happiest man in the world. In any other situation, it'd be a sight that would warm my heart and make me happy for the man. In this situation, it scared the ever-loving shit out of me. "Okay, this is too fucking creepy," Spencer said, his voice trembling as he looked around the restaurant. "Yeah, you're not kidding, man," I said to myself silently. The captain turned to us, worry etched into his face. "Does anyone know what the hell is going on?" he asked. "Oh, it's time to come clean and tell him all the truth." The thought was just running around my head. I forced myself to speak. "Captain, look, as much as I wish I didn't, I think I do know what's going on. Kind of." Everyone turned to me. I took a deep breath, then I began to speak. I told them everything. About all the things you guys said, the things they denied, about the horrifying things I saw in the darkened hallway yesterday, and about what the four of us had experienced not even half an hour ago, right in this very restaurant. As I spoke, I saw some of my crewmates' faces go pale. Others seemed to fight what I was saying. I saw Spencer and Andrew didn't believe a word I said, or at least didn't want to. But I saw that the captain did. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then the captain spoke. "I'm not entirely sure I believe all of this, any of this. That this is the actual Queen Elizabeth and we're aboard an actual ghost ship, but this..." He gestured to Will's still, smiling face and the lipstick on his face. "This is all I need to see to make up my mind." He looked over at me. "We have a week and a half's food and water left. We're going to gather it up, lower one of the lifeboats, and we're going to row the fuck away from this ship as fast as we can. And we're going to pray we make it back to land. At his words, Will's face suddenly turned worried. No, I don't want to leave, he said. No, not after meeting Diana. I want to stay. The captain grabbed Will by the arm and hoisted him up to his feet. Frankly, son, I don't give a damn what you want. We're leaving now. The younger man began to protest and struggle, trying to wrench himself out of his grasp, but the captain was stronger, a lot stronger, and he pulled him towards the exit. He was almost shouting as we entered the hallway. Get the fuck off me. I don't want to go back to this shitty fucked up world in 2023. I want to stay. She said I could stay. That's my dream, man. I want to stay forever in 1950s. 1950s, it could be real. I felt a chill at his words, but continued following the captain. We'd just reached the bottom of the stairs when a huge vibration surged up through the floor into our feet. It was so strong that I nearly fell on my ass. What the hell was that? I thought. Vinny spoke the same words aloud. What the hell was that? A new sound began filtering up from beneath our feet. A deep, low-pitched hum that slowly began to intensify. I suddenly saw the captain's face go pale, even further than it already had. No, he breathed, and then began tearing up the stairs, dragging Will behind him. As we followed, I suddenly realized why he'd reacted the way he did. When I was a little child in the 90s, I'd traveled aboard a cruise ship with my aunt and uncle, and I clearly remember the noise the giant engines made as they powered up before we left port. The engines were starting. Everyone raced for the nearest door to the outside deck. I prayed that I was wrong, that the ship would still be dead in the water when we emerged outside. I wasn't. When we emerged on the deck into the fading light, it was to see that the ship had begun moving, accelerating far quicker than I thought such a huge ship ever could. The water at the stern stretched out behind us in a foam, churned up by the ship's huge propellers. As we stood on the deck, I felt a sinking, hopeless feeling fall over me. We can't escape in the lifeboat now. We'll be sucked under and torn apart. Slowly, silently, everyone turned away from the sight, unsure looks in their faces. Everyone except Will, who wore a grinning, ecstatic look. We're back in our cabins now. We've partnered up, each having 3 or 4 people per room. Nobody wants to be alone now. The captain took Will into his room. He refuses to let him out of his sight. The doors are firmly locked, so I doubt after what I've seen, if they truly want in, they'll find a way. And the fire axes we've brought into rooms with us won't do a damn bit of good. Somehow the others have fallen asleep, Spencer and Andrew on the giant bed, Wyatt on the floor with a blanket and pillow. I think, once again, I'm the only one still awake. This ship, it doesn't want us to leave. It doesn't want us to leave so bad it's going to fire up its own engines and take off for where I don't know. I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen to us. I want to ask what you think we should do now. But I don't know if any of you would have any idea of what to do in a situation like this. And yet, I have to. It's the only shred of hope I have left, so please, what should we do? How can we even attempt to stop the ship? How in the fuck can we defend ourselves against things that are already dead? What the hell is happening to Will? What did that woman he spoke of, Diana, what did she do to him? Look, I was about to finish, but I have to tell you, Two final things. Two things that scare me almost more than anything that's happened today. Look, the first is I hear music. Not music over the intercom, but actual live music filtering in through the doors and the walls. It's an old song. It's a song I recognise, a song my grandmother used to listen to constantly. It's a big band song called In the Mood. It's by Glenn Miller. Worse is that I hear the voices. I hear laughter. Sometimes screaming. You know what, that's not even the part that scares me the most. The bit that fills me with the most dread. Look, as I was sitting here typing, something was forced under the door. When I put on my flashlight and aimed it, I saw one of those programs like the one I found yesterday. I went over to it. Saw it was a bit different. It had a smiling cartoon octopus on it. It stared up at me from the cover, playing a trumpet and a violin, its tentacles holding the same objects that had been on the other program. When I flipped it open, I saw two things that made me want to scream. The first was the date in the upper right-hand corner. Wednesday, December 6th, 2023. The second was what was on the left-hand page under the notices bulletin. We would like to welcome aboard our newest passengers, Gabriel Lerner, Wyatt Strosky, Vincent Gaetano, William Jenkins, Andrew Webber, Spencer Michaels, Nathan Rogers. We hope you enjoy your stay with us. God help me.